Information is Fundamental by Alfred Joyce. Video Part 6. 2. Human use of vocabulary as a processing tool. Information and information processing is the most fundamental form of communication. Communication is occurring all the time at all levels of reality. Hidden within the word's essence and characteristics is the notion of communication. During information processing, essence communicates, "This is what I am made of," and characteristics communicate, "This is what I do," and information communicates, "This is what I am." An efficient system knows how to accurately receive, process, and transmit information for a successful communication process. The knowledge the system possesses, the tools at its disposal, and its method of execution will determine its communication efficiency. So let's consider the human as a system and see what tools we use and how they influence our communication capabilities. How efficiently are we actually processing the fundamental information that permeates the universe? Verbal language is a tool we use to bridge the communication gaps of subjective, individual processed information between humans, and to bridge the communication gaps of information between the fundamental level and the designated emergent human reality base level. Vocabulary is a tool we have created. The words that form our vocabulary are assigned to groupings of information based on our information processing capabilities of them, perception. So words are always a limited approximation of what is at the fundamental level, yet they are an established fundamental base of resulting processed information by humans at our designated emergent reality level. This particular tool's mechanism of establishing words based on our perception of processed information highlights the concept of meaning to the system. You could describe the mechanism as follows. Information processed as X perceived grouping of information by the system means Z to the system. Meaning to the system is an emergent characteristic of communication, and all designated emergent reality base levels have their own form of common processed information language / meaning to their system. Therefore, all information processing tools have the function of communicating meaning. How the meanings are established, processed, and communicated by an entity at a designated emergent reality base level is critical. What a word is an assigned entity imbued with meaning as an attempt to make an equivalency translation bridge between a subjective, individually processed information experience and a suggested, objective, universally processed information experience. In other words, the suggestion is perceived X grouping of information means Z to me. Therefore, X grouping of information means Z to all with similar information processing mechanisms to mine. And therefore, we can communicate in a common processed information language / meaning to all. It's important to note that an established meaning to the system, which is an equivalence translation of processed information by an entity, is only applicable at the entity's designated emergent reality base level. The established common processed information language / meaning to the system is derived from the entity's perception of information. As an example, the perceived X grouping of information we call an apple means apple to humanity. But to our bodies, which operate at a different designated emergent reality base level, apple means nutrition, calories, vitamins, etc. in its language. At the atomic level, apple means hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, etc. in its language. Later, we will examine how this useful mechanism, based on subjectivity at our designated emergent reality base level, is dependent on our self-awareness. But for now, let us continue to examine our intended usage of vocabulary and words. An entity is information whether we perceive it and name it or not. But by naming it, we've given a perceived grouping of information meaning at our designated emergent human reality base level. Vocabulary is a tool made by us composed of words imbued with meaning to us. Vocabulary and meaning are essential tools that unite us at our designated emergent reality base level. How well they unite us with ourselves and with the fundamental level depends on our use of them. It's helpful to understand the nature of the universe and the nature of the tools we use to try to understand the universe, and how, based on our methods and capacity to process information, we may or may not be moving away from the fundamental aspect of the universe. So, although we do our best to understand the universe from its reference point, we remain aware of the human context in which we are doing so. Therefore, we must recognize how our human influence might be tainting our understanding of our processing of information at the fundamental level. We should be particularly vigilant when we encounter adjectives. All adjectives are descriptions relative to the human perspective, whether the sky is big, blue, inspiring, far, or any other description. It's purely based on our method of processing information. Therefore, adjectives are resulting process information from our designated emergent reality base level. Verbs, in some way or another, are a form of information processing. Indeed, since everything is information and processes information, every action is some form of information processing. Verbs are also descriptions relative to the human perspective. A person dies. To die is an emergent characteristic from a perceived grouping of information, which, depending on one's perspective, can be perceived as the death of the old perceived grouping of information or the birth of a new perceived grouping of information. The sun rises. The sun is perceived to rise by us based on our position. It doesn't actually perform a rising motion. So as we can see, our language and vocabulary are useful information processing tools, but we must be aware of their nature and limitations. With each level of emergence, we seemingly move further from the fundamental level. And we know that it is at the fundamental level that the primordial fabric/substance originated, the origin of the universe. And the true aspect of what our language attempts to convey. Through language, we are attempting to convey a truthful and accurate translation of our experience of information processing, of our experience of the universe, and ultimately of the universe itself. Information processing happens all the time at all levels of reality. And not all entities need/use words as a tool to communicate their processing of information. Indeed, your brain is well aware of the fire burning your hand without the need for words from your hand. There is a form of wordless communication established within the body at its designated emergent reality base level. where all entities within the body share the same common processed information language/meaning to the system. But in order for humans to communicate their processing of information to other humans, vocabulary was created. And since we can't directly communicate our perception to another, we needed to find a translation/approximation at our designated emergent reality base level to bridge the communication gap. Then, assuming we have the same information processing mechanism, we can agree that our translations/approximations are truly representative of our processed information at our designated emergent reality base level, and that the same meaning is understood when communicated.